Who pays the commission in dual agency? Hey folks, my name is Chris at Hauseit. Today we're going to talk about this question that's often posed by first-time buyers and sellers. And they've often heard of the term dual agency. If they don't really know too much about the space, they can probably assume that it means the seller's broker represents both the buyer and the seller. And that is generally correct. In dual agency, the seller's broker has a fiduciary duty to both the buyer and the seller and essentially represents both parties. If you're an agent at one of our brokerage brands, you'll learn from your principal broker and managers that we typically don't even recommend dual agency as the seller's broker, and that's because it's often easier to just explain to buyers, for example, someone who walks into your open house that, hey, I'm the seller's agent, I represent the seller, but it's my duty to be honest and fair to you, all parties, so let me show you the property. Versus trying to explain what dual agency is, get them to sign the agency disclosure form and explaining, hey, I represent both interests, but then I can't disclose anything that might harm either interest. It's just so convoluted. So for most instances, and we can talk about this in a future video as well, but usually it's always better for the seller's broker to remain a seller's broker. But let's say in the instance of dual agency, let's say a hypothetical example where dual agency might make sense is a buyer comes in to an open house, they didn't like the property, and then they speak with the seller's broker, builds rapport. The seller's broker says, hey, let me show you some other listings as your buyer's agent. So then now the seller's broker has become this buyer's agent. They're looking at other properties, they're shopping around, but then that buyer rethinks and says, hey, that original listing of yours that I saw, I want to revisit it again, and and now you're my buyer's broker. So in that instance, the broker has intimate knowledge of the buyer's finances situation, and also their seller is their existing client. So in that case, that's an example of dual agency. So as you can see, a bit more nuanced and rare, but regardless, what we think you probably mean when you ask who pays the commission in dual agency, it's usually more simple than that. Usually, especially newer buyers and sellers are probably just wanting to know, who pays the commission when there's only, one broker, the seller's broker, representing both. Well, as we've discussed in a previous video as well, who pays a buyer's agent, the answer is the same. So it's always the seller. The broker commissions are always a seller closing cost, regardless of what happens. And that's the case in these traditional listing agreements. Again, what typically happens is the seller negotiates a listing agreement with the seller's broker, also known as the listing broker. And it's usually, traditionally, for a fixed percentage, like 5-6%, and or 7%, it's usually, let's say 6 is a percentage that you hear about quite often, and that gets paid regardless of what happens. So if the buyer has an agent, then that commission gets split per association rules, usually 50-50. If the buyer doesn't have an agent, then the seller's broker still collects that commission, but just keeps it all for him or herself. So for example, 6%. So to answer the question, in the case of dual agency, where it's just the seller's broker, and well, they would collect the entire commission and keep it for themselves. So 6% in the most common example. So there you have it. We hope you found this video helpful, and remember that through Hauseit, we can actually help you save on this traditional 6% broker commission with a agent-assisted FSBO listing service, where if you have time to do it yourself and do your own showings and such, and negotiation, coordination, scheduling, you can save all 6% if you find a direct buyer with our do-it-yourself flat fee MLS listing service called our agent-assisted FSBO service. And if you're looking for something a bit more hands-on, we also have a 1% for full service listing option, where one of our agents handles everything for you, and for a 1% listing fee. And of course, if you're looking to buy, we can help you save 2% or more on your purchase with our Hauseit buyer closing credit, where we give you 2/3 of the buyer broker commission, subject to us keeping a small minimum of 1% as of this writing, as of this filming. And we cover all of New York City, all 5 boroughs of New York City, Long Island, the Hudson Valley. We're headquartered now in Miami, Florida, so we cover Miami-Dade County, Broward, Palm Beach, Martin, and St. Lucie counties. My name is Chris at Hauseit, and we'll see you on the next one.